The knock came just after midnight. Jack Mercer was awake, as he often was these days, sitting in his chair by the dying fire, a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the table beside him, staring at nothing. Sleep didn't come easy anymore. Hadn't for 3 years, not since he'd buried his daughter in the cemetery on the hill behind his ranch. The knock came again, softer this time. Hesitant, Jack's hand moved to the revolver on his hip as he stood. No one came calling at this hour unless they were desperate or dangerous. And out here in the Montana wilderness, the two were often the same. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled open the door. A girl stood on his porch. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old, barefoot, wearing a thin cotton dress that was torn at the hem and stained with dirt. Her hair hung in tangled dark curls around a face so pale it looked almost translucent in the moonlight. But it was her eyes that stopped him, wide, dark, filled with a terror so raw it made his chest tighten. "Please," she whispered, "please help my mama." Jack stared at her, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. A child, alone, in the middle of the night, miles from the nearest town. "Where's your mother?" he asked, his voice rough from disuse. The girl's lip trembled. "She's hurt. Real bad. We were running and she fell, and now she won't wake up, and I don't know what to do, and—" Her words tumbled out in a rush, breaking apart into sobs. Jack knelt down, bringing himself to her level. "Easy," he said quietly. "Take a breath. Where is she?" The girl pointed toward the tree line beyond his pasture. "In the woods. About a mile that way. She told me to find help. Told me to run." "Running from what?" The girl's eyes darted past him, toward the darkness beyond the porch, and he saw pure fear flicker across her face. "Bad men," she whispered. "They're coming." Jack's jaw tightened. He straightened and looked out into the night, listening. The wind moved through the pines, carrying the scent of rain and earth. Somewhere in the distance an owl called. But beneath it all, he thought he heard something else. The faint sound of horses, still far off but getting closer. He made his decision in an instant. "Come inside," he said. The girl hesitated, then stepped through the doorway. Jack closed it behind her and moved quickly through the house, gathering supplies. His medical kit, a battered leather bag that had seen more use than he cared to remember. A rifle, extra ammunition, a lantern. The girl watched him with wide eyes, her small hands clutched together in front of her chest. "What's your name?" Jack asked as he worked. "Lily," she said softly. "I'm Jack. You did good, Lily. Real good. Your mama's lucky to have you." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Is she gonna die?" Jack paused, his hand on the rifle, and looked at her. He thought about lying, about offering false comfort, but something in those eyes told him she'd know. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I'm going to try to help her. That's all I can promise." Lily nodded, swiping at her tears with the back of her hand. Jack finished loading his saddlebag and slung it over his shoulder, then grabbed the medical kit and rifle. He turned to Lily. "Can you show me where she is?" "Yes, sir." "Then let's go." They left the house and moved quickly across the pasture. Jack's horse, a sturdy roan named Red, stood ready in the paddock. He saddled her with practiced efficiency, then lifted Lily up onto the saddle before swinging up behind her. The girl felt light as a bird in his arms, all bones and fear. "Hold on tight," he said. She nodded, her small hands gripping the saddle horn, and Jack spurred Red forward into the night. They rode in silence, the only sounds the steady rhythm of hooves on earth and Lily's quiet breathing. The moon was nearly full, casting enough light to see by, and Jack followed the girl's whispered directions, past the old oak, around the creek bend, through the gap in the rocks. The woods closed in around them, dark and dense, branches clawing at their clothes. Jack's every sense was alert, his eyes scanning the shadows, his ears straining for any sound that didn't belong. The horses he'd heard earlier were closer now, he was sure of it, maybe 10 minutes behind, maybe less. "There," Lily whispered, pointing. Jack saw her, a woman lying at the base of a massive pine tree, half hidden by undergrowth. He dismounted quickly and handed Lily the reins. "Stay with Red," he said. "If you hear anyone coming, anyone at all, you ride back to my ranch as fast as you can. You understand?" Lily's face crumpled, but she nodded. Jack moved to the woman's side and knelt down, setting the lantern beside him. In its flickering light, he could see she was young, late 20s maybe, with dark hair and delicate features. Her dress was torn and blood-stained, and a gash across her temple had bled down the side of her face. Her breathing was shallow, labored. He pressed 2 fingers to her throat. Her pulse was weak but steady. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered, and she made a soft sound, somewhere between a moan and a word. Jack opened his medical kit and went to work quickly, cleaning the head wound, checking for broken bones, assessing the damage. She had bruises on her ribs, possibly cracked, and her ankle was swollen, likely sprained. But it was the head injury that worried him most. Concussion, at least. Maybe worse. Behind him, Lily whispered, "Is she okay?" "She's alive," Jack said. "That's what matters right now." He pulled a length of bandage from his kit and wrapped it around the woman's head, working with steady hands despite the urgency pounding in his chest. As he tied off the bandage, the woman's eyes opened, just a crack, and she looked at him. "Lily," she breathed. "She's safe," Jack said. "I've got you both." The woman's hand shot out, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. "They're coming," she gasped. You have to hide her." "Who's coming?" Her eyes rolled back, and she went limp. Jack cursed under his breath. He looked over his shoulder at Lily, who sat frozen on the horse, tears streaming down her face. "Is Mama dead?" she whispered. "No," Jack said firmly. "But we need to move. Now." He lifted the woman as gently as he could. She weighed almost nothing, and carried her to Red. Getting all 3 of them on the horse would be difficult, but he'd manage harder things. He positioned the woman in front of the saddle, then climbed up behind her, pulling Lily up in front of him. The horse shifted under the extra weight but held steady. Jack turned Red toward home and kicked her into a trot. The woman's head lolled against his chest, and Lily sat rigid with fear, her small body trembling. And behind them, carried on the wind, came the sound Jack had been dreading. Hoofbeats, getting closer. Jack pushed Red hard, harder than he liked, but he had no choice. The woman in his arms was barely breathing. Lily was shaking so badly she could hardly hold on, and the riders behind them were closing the distance. He could hear them now, voices shouting, the thunder of multiple horses moving fast. The ranch came into view just as the first drops of rain began to fall. Jack guided Red into the barn, dismounted quickly, and lifted the woman down as gently as he could. Lily jumped down after him, her face pale in the lamplight. "Help me get her inside," Jack said. Lily grabbed the medical kit while Jack carried the woman toward the house. The rain was falling harder now, turning the dust to mud, and somewhere behind them, the riders were getting closer, maybe 5 minutes out, maybe less. Inside, Jack laid the woman on his bed and immediately went to work, checking her pulse, her breathing, the bandage on her head. Lily stood at the foot of the bed, her hands twisted together, watching with terrified eyes. "Is she going to be okay?" Lily asked. "I don't know yet," Jack said. He looked up at the girl. "Lily, I need you to tell me what happened. Who are those men? Why are they chasing you?" Lily's face crumpled. They took us, Mama and me, from our home. They said we belonged to them now, said we were going to work for them. But Mama, Lily's voice broke. "She fought back. She got us away, but they've been following us for days." Jack's jaw clenched. He'd heard stories like this. Men who preyed on women and children traveling alone, who took them and sold them, or worse. The kind of men who thought the wilderness made them untouchable. "How many?" he asked. "4, Lily whispered. "Maybe 5. Jack stood and moved to the window, peering out through the curtain. In the distance, he could see lights, torches moving through the rain toward his property. He had maybe 3 minutes. He turned back to Lily. "Listen to me very carefully. I need you to go into that back room." He pointed to a small door at the rear of the house. "There's a root cellar underneath. You climb down there and you don't make a sound, no matter what you hear. Understand?" Lily's eyes went wide. "What about Mama?" "I'll take care of your Mama. But go, now!" Lily hesitated for just a moment, then ran to the back room. Jack watched her disappear through the door, heard the creak of the cellar hatch opening, then silence. He turned back to the woman on the bed. She was still unconscious, her breathing shallow. Moving her was too dangerous. If she had internal injuries, any jostling could kill her, which meant Jack had to deal with the men coming. Alone. He grabbed his rifle and checked the ammunition, then positioned himself at the front window where he had a clear view of the approach. The rain hammered against the roof, and lightning flickered in the distance. The riders came into the yard a minute later. There were 5 of them, just as Lily had said. They spread out in a loose semicircle in front of the house, their horses stamping and snorting in the downpour. The man in the center was large, thick-shouldered, with a beard that hung to his chest and a hat pulled low over his eyes. "We know they're in there," he shouted over the rain. "Send them out and we'll leave you be." Jack stepped onto the porch, rifle held across his chest. "Don't know what you're talking about." The bearded man laughed. "Don't play games with me, old man. We tracked them here. The woman and the girl. They're ours." "They're not yours," Jack said quietly. "They're not anybody's." "That's where you're wrong. We paid good money for them. They ran. We're just taking back what's ours." Jack's finger moved to the trigger. "You're on my land. I'm asking you once to leave." The bearded man's smile faded. "And if we don't, then you don't leave at all." The men behind the bearded man shifted in their saddles, hands moving toward their guns. The bearded man studied Jack for a long moment, weighing him, calculating. "You really willing to die for some woman and kid you don't even know?" he asked. Jack thought about the girl in his cellar, terrified, clutching her knees in the dark. He thought about the woman in his bed, beaten and broken, who'd fought to save her daughter. He thought about his own daughter, 3 years dead, and the promise he'd made to himself at her grave. Never again will I stand by and do nothing. "Yeah," Jack said, "I am." The bearded man's expression hardened. "Then you're a fool." He reached for his gun. Jack fired first. The shot echoed across the yard, and the bearded man jerked back in his saddle, blood blooming across his shoulder. His horse reared and he tumbled to the ground. The other men scattered, drawing their weapons, and the night erupted in gunfire. Jack dropped to one knee, taking cover behind the porch rail. Bullets splintered the wood around him, punching through the walls of the house. He fired back, methodical and precise, years of hunting and war coming back to him like muscle memory. One man fell, then another. The remaining 3 retreated toward the barn, taking cover, shouting to each other over the rain. Jack reloaded quickly, his heart hammering in his chest, his breath coming hard. "Give us the woman!" one of them shouted. "Just give us the woman and we'll go!" "No!" Jack shouted back. A bullet shattered the window beside him. Jack rolled away, came up firing, and caught one of the men in the leg. The man screamed and went down. 2 left. They came at him together, charging from opposite sides. Jack swung his rifle toward the first one and fired, but the second one was already on the porch, lunging at him. They hit the ground hard, the rifle clattering away, and Jack's vision exploded with stars as the man's fist connected with his jaw. He rolled, grabbed for his revolver, and jammed it under the man's chin. The man froze. "Get off!" Jack rasped. The man raised his hands slowly and backed away. The last man stood at the edge of the porch, his gun pointed at Jack. For a moment, no one moved. The rain fell. The wind howled. Then from inside the house, a voice, weak, trembling, but clear. "Leave him alone." Everyone turned. The woman stood in the doorway, leaning heavily against the frame, blood soaking through the bandage on her head. In her hand was Jack's spare revolver, and though her arm shook, the barrel was pointed straight at the man on the porch. "You heard her," Jack said, rising slowly to his feet. "Get on your horse, all of you, and ride." The man on the porch looked at his companion, then at the woman. Then slowly, he holstered his gun. "This ain't over," he muttered. "Yes, it is," the woman said. The 2 men dragged their wounded to their horses and rode off into the rain. Jack watched until they disappeared, then turned to the woman. She swayed, and he caught her just as her legs gave out. "Easy," he said. "You shouldn't be standing." "My daughter," she breathed. "Where?" "Safe. She's safe." The woman's eyes closed, and she sagged against him. Jack carried her back to the bed and laid her down gently. Lily appeared from the back room, running to her mother's side. "Mama!" The woman's hand found Lily's, squeezing weakly. "I'm here, baby. I'm here." Jack stepped back, giving them space, his hands still shaking from adrenaline. He looked at the bullet holes in his walls, the blood on his porch, the broken glass scattered across the floor, and he thought, what have I got myself into? The woman's name was Catherine. Jack learned this over the next 2 days as he tended to her wounds and she drifted in and out of consciousness. Lily stayed by her mother's side almost constantly, speaking to her in soft whispers, holding her hand, refusing to leave even to eat. Jack brought them food, simple meals of bread and stew, and watched as Lily fed her mother tiny spoonfuls, patient and gentle beyond her years. It broke something in him. Watching them reminded him of things he'd tried to forget. On the third morning, Catherine woke fully for the first time. Jack was checking the bandage on her head when her eyes opened, clearer now, focused. She looked at him for a long moment, then at Lily sleeping in a chair beside the bed. "Thank you," she said, her voice hoarse. Jack nodded. "How do you feel?" "Like I got trampled by a horse." She tried to sit up and winced. "Where are we?" "My ranch, about 40 miles north of Helena." Jack helped her adjust the pillow behind her back. "You've been out for 3 days." Catherine's eyes widened. 3 days? She looked at Lily, panic flashing across her face. "Did they—" "They're gone," Jack said. "2 dead, 3 wounded. They won't be coming back." Catherine sagged with relief, then her eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to bring this to your door." "You didn't bring anything. You were running for your life." "Still." Catherine wiped at her eyes. "You could have turned us away. Most people would have." Jack didn't respond. He stood and moved to the window, looking out at the morning light spreading across his land. "Lily told me what happened," he said quietly. "Men took you from your home, planned to sell you." Catherine's jaw tightened. "We were traveling. My husband died last year, and I was trying to get to my sister's place in Oregon. We stopped at a trading post, and—" her voice broke. "They drugged our water. When I woke up, we were in a wagon, tied up, 5 other women with us. They said we were going to a work camp, but I knew what kind of work they meant." "How'd you get away?" "There was a storm. The wagon got stuck. I I killed one of the guards with a rock, took his knife, cut Lily free and ran." Catherine's hands clenched in the blanket. "The other women, I couldn't save them. I tried, but—" "You saved your daughter," Jack said. "That's what matters." Catherine looked at him, something raw in her expression. "You don't understand. Those women, they're still out there, still prisoners, and I just left them. You did what you had to do." "Did I?" Catherine's voice rose, waking Lily, who sat up with a start. "Or am I just a coward?" "Mama?" Lily said, her voice small. Catherine immediately softened, reaching for her daughter. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm okay." Lily climbed onto the bed and curled against her mother's side. Catherine held her close, pressing her face into Lily's hair. Jack watched them for a moment, then quietly left the room. Outside, the morning was cold and bright. Jack walked to the barn and began his chores, feeding the horses, mucking stalls, trying to lose himself in routine. But his mind kept returning to Catherine's words. The other women, they're still out there. He knew what she was asking, even if she hadn't said it outright. She wanted him to do something, to go after them, to be a hero. Jack wasn't a hero. He was just a rancher who'd gotten old and tired and haunted by ghosts. But as he worked, he kept thinking about Lily's terrified face when she'd knocked on his door, about Catherine fighting for her life with a rock and a knife, about the women still trapped, waiting for someone to save them. Not my problem, he told himself. Not my fight. But the thought rang hollow. That afternoon, a rider appeared on the road. Jack saw him coming from the barn and reached for his rifle, but relaxed when he recognized the horse. It was Sheriff Tom Ridley from Helena, a decent man Jack had known for years. Tom dismounted and walked over, his face grim. "Jack." "Tom, heard you had some trouble out here. Word travels fast." "It does when 2 bodies turn up on the road with bullet holes in them." Tom's eyes were sharp. "Want to tell me what happened?" Jack told him. "Everything. About Lily knocking on his door, about Catherine in the woods, about the men who'd come for them. When he finished, Tom was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed and took off his hat, running a hand through his graying hair. "You did the right thing," he said finally. "Those men, we've been looking for them for months. Part of a trafficking ring that's been operating all through the territory. We just couldn't catch them." "You catch the rest of them?" Jack asked. Tom shook his head. "The three that got away disappeared. But I've got deputies out looking." He paused. "There's something else. We found their camp, about 20 miles south, and we found the wagon. But the women—" Tom's face darkened. "They're gone. Moved somewhere else, probably. Maybe even out of the territory by now." Jack's stomach sank. "How many?" "5, according to the woman you have. Catherine, right?" Jack nodded. Tom put his hat back on. "Look, I know what you're thinking, but you can't go after them, Jack. This is law business now." "The law's been trying for months and got nowhere," Jack said. "That doesn't mean—" "Those women are still out there, Tom. Scared. Hurting. Waiting for someone to help them." Tom's expression softened. "I know, but you're one man, and these people, they're dangerous. They've got connections, money, places to hide. You go after them alone, you'll get yourself killed." "Maybe," Jack said, "but at least I'll have tried." Tom stared at him for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "You're a stubborn son of a bitch. You know that?" "So I've been told." Tom reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "This is everything we know about their operation. Locations, names, associates. If you're really going to do this—" He handed it to Jack. "At least don't go in blind." Jack took the paper. "Thanks, Tom. Don't thank me, just try not to get killed." Tom mounted up and rode off, and Jack stood there with the paper in his hand, feeling the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. That night, Catherine was strong enough to sit at the kitchen table. Lily sat beside her, eating stew while Catherine picked at her food, her eyes distant. "You're going after them, aren't you?" Catherine said quietly. Jack looked up. "How'd you know?" "I see it in your face. Same look I had when I decided to run." She met his eyes. "You can't save everyone, Jack." "I know. Then why try?" Jack was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Because 3 years ago, my daughter got sick. Fever. I rode 20 miles to get a doctor, but by the time we got back, she was gone." His voice was flat, emotionless. "I've spent every day since wishing I'd ridden faster, done more, been better." He looked at Catherine. "I can't save my daughter, but maybe I can save someone else's." Catherine's eyes filled with tears. She reached across the table and took his hand. "Then let me help you," she said. Catherine was stronger by the end of the week. Not fully healed. The bruises on her ribs still made her wince, and the gash on her head was only beginning to close. But strong enough to walk without stumbling, to help with small chores, to sit with Jack at the table while Lily slept and they planned. Jack had spread Tom's paper across the table, along with a hand-drawn map. He'd marked the locations Tom had mentioned: safe houses, known routes, places where the trafficking ring had been spotted. "They move the women every few days," Jack said, tracing a line with his finger. "Keep them disoriented. Makes it harder for anyone to find them." "But if we can figure out the pattern—" Catherine leaned forward, studying the map. "There might not be a pattern. These men aren't stupid." "No, but they're predictable." Catherine pointed to 3 locations clustered along a river. "Look, every place they've used has water access, probably because they're moving supplies by boat." Jack looked at her, impressed. "You've got a good eye." "I was a school teacher before—" She trailed off, her expression darkening. "Before everything." "What was your husband's name?" Jack asked quietly. "James." Catherine's voice softened. "He was a good man, gentle. He wanted to build us a life out west, somewhere clean and new." She smiled sadly. "He never got to see it." "I'm sorry." "So am I." Catherine looked at him. "What about your wife? Lily mentioned you live alone." "She died in childbirth. Long time ago now." Jack's jaw tightened. "My daughter, her name was Emma. She was all I had left. When she died—" He stopped, unable to finish. Catherine reached over and covered his hand with hers. I'm sorry, Jack. I truly am. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of shared grief settling between them. Why are you really doing this? Catherine asked finally. It's not just about your daughter, is it? Jack was quiet for a long time. Then he said, when Emma was sick, I prayed. Every day, every night. I begged God to save her, promised I'd be better, do better. But she died anyway. He looked at Catherine. I stopped believing in God after that. But I think maybe I still believe in doing what's right, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Catherine's eyes shone with unshed tears. You're a good man, Jack Mercer. I'm just a man, he said, trying to make up for lost time. The next morning, Catherine insisted on helping Jack with the horses. He tried to argue, but she was stubborn, and eventually he relented. They worked side by side in the barn, brushing down the animals, mucking stalls, talking in the quiet way people do when they're comfortable with silence. Lily appeared after a while carrying a bucket of feed, and Jack showed her how to portion it out properly. The girl listened with rapt attention, her small face serious, and when she got it right, she beamed with pride. You're a natural, Jack said. Really? Really? Lily looked up at him with those wide, trusting eyes. When Mama's all better, are we going to leave? Jack glanced at Catherine, who'd gone still. That's up to your mama, he said carefully. Lily turned to Catherine. Can we stay, Mama? Please? I like it here. Catherine's expression was complicated. Gratitude and fear and something else. Something softer. We'll see, sweetheart. But that night, after Lily had gone to bed, Catherine sat with Jack on the porch. The stars were bright, scattered across the sky like salt, and the air was cool and clean. She's happy here, Catherine said quietly. Happier than I've seen her in a long time. She's a good kid. She is. Catherine paused. What happens after? After we find those women? What happens to us? Jack didn't answer right away. He'd been asking himself the same question. I don't know, he admitted. I guess you'd keep heading to your sister's place in Oregon. And if I didn't want to? Jack looked at her. What are you saying? Catherine met his eyes. I'm saying this place, this ranch, this life. It feels like something I forgot existed. Safety, peace, a chance to breathe. Her voice dropped. I'm saying I don't want to leave. Jack's heart kicked hard against his ribs. Catherine, I know it's too soon. I know you barely know us. But Lily, she needs stability. And Catherine's voice broke. I need to stop running. Jack was silent for a long moment. Then he said, you can stay as long as you need. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. You mean that? I do. She reached over and took his hand, squeezing it gently. They sat like that for a long time, holding hands under the stars. Two broken people finding something like hope in each other. The next few days passed in a kind of rhythm. Jack taught Lily to ride while Catherine regained her strength. In the evenings, they ate together, and afterward, Catherine would tell stories about her childhood, her students, the life she'd left behind. Jack found himself laughing for the first time in years, found himself looking forward to mornings instead of dreading them. One night, as they were cleaning up after dinner, Lily tugged on Jack's sleeve. Mr. Mercer? Yeah? Can I call you Jack? He smiled. Sure, kid. Jack, do you think you could be my new papa? The world went still. Jack looked at Catherine, who'd frozen at the sink, her hands in the soapy water. She turned slowly, her face unreadable. Lily, she said gently. That's not. I know he's not really my papa, Lily said quickly, but he's nice to us, and he makes you smile. And I think maybe he could be, if he wanted. Jack knelt down in front of her, his throat tight. I'd be honored, he said quietly. Lily threw her arms around his neck, and Jack held her, feeling something break open inside him, something that had been sealed shut for 3 years. When he looked up, Catherine was crying, her hands pressed over her mouth. Thank you, she mouthed. Jack nodded, unable to speak. That night after Lily was asleep, Catherine came to find him on the porch. You didn't have to say that, she said. I meant it. Catherine sat down beside him. You're giving us more than shelter, Jack. You're giving us hope. And I don't know how to repay that. You don't have to. She looked at him. And in the moonlight, her face was open, vulnerable. What if I want to? Jack's breath caught. Slowly, carefully, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Catherine leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. Catherine, he said softly. She opened her eyes. Yes. When this is over, when we've found those women and you're safe, I want you to stay. Not because you have nowhere else to go, but because you want to. Catherine smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing he'd seen in years. I already do, she whispered. And when she kissed him, gentle and tentative and full of promise, Jack felt something he thought he'd lost forever. He felt alive. Section 4. Word count. 1,210 words. They left at dawn 2 days later. Catherine insisted on coming despite Jack's protests. Those women need to see a friendly face when we find them, she'd said. They need to know they're not being rescued by just another man with a gun. She had a point. Lily stayed behind with Tom's wife, Martha, who'd come out to the ranch specifically to look after her. Lily had cried when they left, clinging to her mother, but Catherine had been firm. I'll be back soon, sweetheart. I promise. You better, Lily had whispered. Now Jack and Catherine rode south, following the trail Tom's deputies had mapped out. They traveled in silence mostly, stopping only to rest the horses and check the map. Jack watched Catherine from the corner of his eye, noting the set of her jaw, the way her hands gripped the reins. She was afraid, but she wasn't backing down. They reached the first location, an abandoned trading post, by mid-afternoon. Jack dismounted and moved carefully through the building, his rifle ready, but it was empty. Signs of recent use, though. Fresh ashes in the fireplace, discarded food scraps. They were here, Catherine said, examining the scraps. Maybe a day ago. They kept moving. The second location was a farmhouse tucked into a valley. Jack approached cautiously, every sense on high alert. But again, it was empty, abandoned in a hurry by the looks of it. Blankets still on the floor, a pot of something burned on the stove. Damn it, Jack muttered. Catherine knelt by the blankets, her face pale. They're moving them faster than we thought. Then we need to move faster too. They rode through the night, stopping only briefly to let the horses rest. By dawn, they reached the third location, a warehouse near the river. Exactly where Catherine had predicted. And this time, they weren't alone. Jack counted 3 men standing guard outside, rifles in hand. He and Catherine dismounted a quarter-mile away and crept closer on foot, using the trees for cover. How do we get in? Catherine whispered. Jack studied the building. 1 door in front, probably 1 in back. Windows high up, too small to climb through. We created distraction, he said. You go around back. When you hear gunfire, you get those women out. Understand? Catherine's eyes widened. Jack, you can't take on 3 men alone. I'm not planning to. Jack pulled out a stick of dynamite he'd brought from the ranch. I'm planning to even the odds first. He lit the fuse and threw it toward the far side of the building. The explosion was deafening, shaking the ground, sending debris flying. The guards scrambled toward the blast, shouting, and Jack opened fire. He dropped 1 man immediately. The second took cover behind a barrel, returning fire. Jack ducked behind a tree as bullets splintered the bark around him. In the chaos, he saw Catherine slip around the back of the building. The second guard broke from cover, charging toward Jack's position. Jack stepped out and fired once, clean and precise. The man went down. The third guard was smarter. He stayed hidden, taking pot shots from behind the warehouse. Jack circled around, moving low and fast, and came up behind him. The man turned just as Jack's rifle butt connected with his skull. He dropped like a stone. Jack ran to the warehouse door and kicked it open. Inside, it was dark and smelled of mildew and fear. 5 women huddled in the corner, chained to a support beam, their eyes wide with terror. Catherine was already there, working at the chains with a set of lockpicks she'd taken from one of the guards. It's all right, she was saying softly. We're here to help. You're safe now. One by one, the chains fell away. The women stood on shaking legs, crying, clinging to each other. Can you ride? Jack asked. A few nodded. 1 woman collapsed and too weak to stand. Jack lifted her over his shoulder. Let's move. They got the women outside just as more riders appeared in the distance. Reinforcements coming fast. "Get them on the horses!" Jack shouted. Catherine helped the women mount while Jack reloaded his rifle. There were 6 riders coming, maybe more behind them. "We're not going to make it," Catherine said, her voice tight. "Yes, we are." Jack swung up onto his horse and pulled the weakest woman up in front of him. "Ride hard and don't look back." They took off at a gallop, the women clinging desperately to the horses. Behind them, the riders gave chase, shouting, firing. Bullets whizzed past Jack's head, and he fired back over his shoulder, trying to slow them down. One of the women screamed as her horse stumbled. Catherine wheeled back, catching the woman before she fell, and hauled her onto her own horse. "Go!" Jack shouted. They rode like hell itself was chasing them. The river appeared ahead, wide and fast-moving. Jack didn't slow. He spurred his horse into the water, and the others followed. The current was strong, pulling at them, but the horses were strong too. They made it across, scrambling up the far bank just as the riders reached the other side. But they didn't follow. They sat on their horses watching, and then slowly turned and rode away. Jack didn't stop until they were 5 miles clear. When he finally pulled up, everyone was gasping, soaked, exhausted, but alive. "We did it," Catherine breathed. "We actually did it." Jack looked at the women, frightened, traumatized, but free, and felt something settle in his chest. "Yeah," he said, "we did." 2 weeks later, the ranch was different now. Louder, fuller. 3 of the women had family they could return to, and Tom helped arrange safe passage. The other 2, sisters named Anna and Beth, had nowhere to go. So Jack offered them work, a place to stay, a chance to rebuild. They accepted. Now the house that had been silent for 3 years was filled with voices, laughter, the smell of bread baking. Anna worked in the garden while Beth helped with the horses, and every evening they all sat down to dinner together, a family built not from blood, but from survival. Lily thrived. Her nightmares faded. Her smile came easier. She followed Jack everywhere, chattering about horses and wildflowers and all the things she wanted to learn. And Catherine stayed. Not as a guest, but as something more. She and Jack didn't rush things. They'd both been hurt too badly for that. But slowly, carefully, they built something together. Trust first, then friendship, then love. One evening, 6 months after they'd rescued the women, Jack found Catherine on the porch, watching the sunset. "Hey," he said, sitting beside her. "Hey yourself." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Jack said, "I've been thinking about making this official. You, me, Lily, a family." Catherine looked at him, her eyes shining. "Jack Mercer, are you proposing?" "I guess I am." She laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard. "Then I guess I'm saying yes." Jack pulled her close, and she leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered, "for saving us." "You saved me first," Jack replied. And it was true, because before that knock on his door, before that desperate little voice in the night, Jack had been a dead man walking, haunted, hollow, just waiting for the end. But now he had a reason to wake up in the morning, a reason to keep going, a family to protect and cherish. Now he had a life worth living. Years later, when Lily was grown, strong and fierce, with her mother's courage and Jack's steady hands, she would tell her own children about the night she knocked on a stranger's door, about the rancher who'd grabbed his medical kit and ridden into the darkness without hesitation, about the man who'd fought when he could have run, who'd saved not just her and her mother, but 5 other women who'd lost all hope. Was he a hero, her children would ask? And Lily would smile. He was better than that. He was kind. Because heroes rode off into the sunset. But kindness stayed. It built homes and families. It planted roots that grew deep and strong. And in the end, that mattered more than any gunfight or rescue. That mattered more than anything.